So I've got some notes because I've got a terrible, terrible memory, so you'll just have to bear with me. Overall, PIP allows me to live with a little bit less stress and worry in my life. And the less stress and worry I have in my life, the more of a positive effect that has on my health and keeping me as healthy as possible. In practical terms, money-wise, it's helped immensely. One of the issues that I have had with living with my condition is unhealthy eating, because there are days when I'm having seizures or when I'm recovering from seizures when it's dangerous for me to be cooking. So it's been easy, and myself and my son have fallen into the habit of relying on microwave food, which has very little nutritional value. But with the introduction of PIP into our lives, we can now opt for healthy eating takeaways and more healthy options in terms of diet, which again has a knock-on effect to my overall health. Because of my neurological condition, I'm not allowed to drive a car. Because of my anxiety and agoraphobia, I find it difficult to leave the house and attend appointments, go places on public transport, because I'm very conscious of my safety and my security and the possibility that I could injure myself or have a seizure outside of my house. So having the PIP payments every 4 weeks means that I can rely on private hire taxis to get me from A to B in the safest and quickest way possible. It gives me that bit more independence to know that on those days when I can leave the house, I can do so as safely as possible. PIP means that I can also do nice things to my son occasionally and give him a day off, because he has grown up since he was a toddler with his mum having seizures, and he's seen a lot of scary things and been in a lot of scary situations, and he's very caring and very loving, and he worries about me an awful lot. So it's nice occasionally to just have that little bit of cash to say, go and see that movie, go to the park with your friends, and just go and be a child for a while. It's nice to be able to do something for him and for the other people that have been around to help. Strap yourselves in. This is a long one, unfortunately. It dragged on for, I think it was about 12 months by the end of it all. I initially applied for PIP because a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, does a lot with PIP and PIP applications professionally, and he seemed quite shocked to find out that despite me having been given my diagnosis over 10 years ago, I think it was about 13 years ago, that I'd never applied for PIP before. And I don't know if it was kind of a pride thing for me, or whether I just assumed that it didn't apply to me, or whether I've just never had somebody sit me down and really make me think about how expensive it actually is to live with this condition. So we went through the application, we gathered the evidence, and we sent it off. And then we waited. And we waited, and we waited, and weeks went by. Then eventually my friend called them to see where we were up to in terms of getting an appointment for an assessment. And luckily on that day, they just had a cancellation for a few days later, quite local to me. So a few days later, my friend accompanied me and we went to the assessment. Now, I was already out of my comfort zone because of my anxiety, my agoraphobia. It was very, very overwhelming at first. And it was very emotional for me to try and answer questions that this lady was putting to me. A lot of them, I'd say about 85 to 90% of them didn't seem in any way, shape or form relevant to my epilepsy and my experience. And even though I felt like the assessment went well, I still came away thinking, oh, I should have said that. Oh, I should have mentioned my memory issues, which is, funnily enough, the reason why I may not have mentioned my memory issues was because that was the memory issue. We did the assessment. I felt like it went okay. Again, cut to weeks and weeks later, and I get the letter to say that I didn't score enough points to be eligible for PIP, which seemed very bizarre to me because 5 years ago, when I had to leave work through ill health, I applied for universal credit. And they put me through an assessment which deemed me unfit to work. So I was confused as to why one side could tell me I was unfit to work, and then this other side is telling me that even though I have this lifelong condition, I'm still not unwell enough to deserve any help. So that was quite upsetting. It got a bit more upsetting when we sat down to read the assessment, and it was almost as if the assessor was talking about someone else. A lot of things that I wanted to have in there seemed to be omitted. A lot of the things she was saying that I had said weren't particularly true, or I do not recall saying them. So we went for a mandatory reconsideration. Again, we waited. We were then told again that I didn't score enough points in either category. So we notified them of the intention to take it to tribunal. I wouldn't have been able to do all of that without the help and support of my best friend, who really was fantastic. He was an absolute powerhouse in pushing through, because there were days when I just wanted to give up. This process, like I said, took about 12 months. That's 12 months of my life, and 12 months of my life where every day I have a finite amount of energy that I need to devote to my day. And instead, I'm off thinking and worrying about this. We notified them eventually with the intention to go to a tribunal. And finally, we received a letter where they had reconsidered my application, reconsidered the back and forth things that we were unhappy with in the assessment. And they decided that, yes, I was eligible for PIP. I was eligible for backdating from the application. And I was granted PIP for 2 years. Which has just come under reassessment again, and I've just received notification in the last few weeks that now I will receive the same rate of PIP for the next 3 years before I'm going to need to have like another assessment, which is great. So, I mean, the paperwork at first filling in isn't great when you kind of look at it and you think that most of these questions don't apply to me. So the first instance of the whole experience wasn't great, and then the second instance with a knockback, and then a third instance with another knockback. To be honest, it's quite soul destroying. It's incredibly upsetting. But we got there in the end, and I'm very, very grateful. To be completely honest, I think the system needs a complete overhaul. I think even from the initial application, the whole process needs to be more diverse. I think there needs to be different application packs for people who are applying with different conditions. There just needs more diversity in the whole process. I understand that would probably cost the government a lot more, but it's impossible, and it seems bizarre to try and compare a person with a neurological condition like mine, temporal lobe epilepsy, against somebody who is a wheelchair user. We both face our struggles, but they are very different struggles, and I just think it needs to be more centered around the person who's in front of you rather than just a checklist. Can you walk for 100 meters unaided? Yes or no? Well, there needs to be more diversity in those questions. I would like to hope that in future the people that deal with the assessments, the assessment interviews, and the people that make the decisions had some sort of demonstrable background and professional understanding of epilepsy, some sort of expertise in it, because it is a hidden disability. So, I mean, I think everyone could do with learning a lot more about epilepsy. I think one of the common misconceptions is that epilepsy only affects a person when we're having a seizure, and that's completely untrue. I would say that probably about 50% of my battles in life are my epilepsy, and then the other 50% are my mental health conditions because of my epilepsy. So I think there could be a lot more empathy and a lot more understanding surrounding that. I think it'd probably be a lot more expensive for governments to have to do that, though. So, and I understand there'd be a lot more cost involved having specific professionals who will deal with people with neurological conditions, and specific professionals who will deal with people with other conditions. But I genuinely think it's necessary. I think the end goal, really, what I'd like to hope would eventually happen would be that the government would recognise that the PIP system isn't relevant to a lot of the people who are applying, and that they would work alongside epilepsy charities in particular to develop a more applicable application to work alongside people from epilepsy charities and people with real life experience to come up with a better application form that gives us the opportunity from the beginning to really explain where we are up to, how this affects our lives, instead of this idea of, well, we have good days and we have bad days. It's a condition. We can't predict it. It's unpredictable. And I feel like in this current system, because we have an unpredictable condition, I am not constantly having a seizure. So then they deem me as not unwell enough, even though I always have that condition. It seems ridiculous. I would just hope that in future, the government would be able to and would consider working with charities like Epilepsy Action to come up with more appropriate application forms and ask more relevant questions. And I hope the government would invest in people with more specific backgrounds to have these assessments, to then write these assessments and send them off to decision makers. That's what I would hope for the future, because I would not have got through the process of applying for PIP had it not been for the support that I had. So I think it's very, very easy for people who are more isolated to just give up. And the money is there for people like us to help just lift the burden slightly. And it should be a lot easier to do. I'm sorry I've waffled on quite as much as I have done, but I hope that has helped in some way. Hopefully we can lobby them for some changes that will be more positive for everybody, because obviously this condition doesn't just affect me, it affects my family and my friends, and PIP really goes a long way to helping me feel included and helping them feel happier as well. So thank you very much.